the image pixel loading, like pixel by pixel, that was because the computers were slow. And we're getting to a point now where the computers are getting faster and faster and faster, and quantum computing is like a whole new leap, like way, way, way beyond where we currently are. And so,
by analogy, how would I understand that? So, like, if I've got my dial-up modem over here, and then quantum computing over here,
right?
What's the difference?
Well, I don't know. It's really difficult to explain.
Is it like a billion times faster?
Oh, it's like billions of billions times faster. It's much more than that. I mean, one way of thinking about it is like a floppy disk, which I guess most people remember, 1.4 megabytes, a physical thing back in the day. In 1960 or so, that was basically an entire pallet worth of computer that was moved around by a forklift truck, right? Which is insane. Today, you have billions and billions of times that floppy disk in your smartphone, in your pocket. Tomorrow, you're going to have billions and billions of smartphones in minuscule wearable devices. There'll be cheap fridge magnets that, are constantly on everywhere, sensing all the time, monitoring, processing, analyzing, improving, optimizing, and they'll be super cheap. So it's super unclear what do you do with all of that knowledge and information. I mean, ultimately, knowledge creates value. When you know the relationship between things, you can improve them, make it more efficient. And so more data is what has enabled us to build all the value of, online in the last 25 years. And so what does that look like in 150 years? I can't really even imagine, to be honest with you. It's very hard to say. I don't think everybody is going to be working.
Why would we? Yeah,
we wouldn't be working in that kind of environment. I mean, look, the other trajectory to add to this is the cost of energy production. AI, if it really helps us solve battery storage, which is the missing piece, I think, to really tackle climate change, then we will be able to source and store infinite energy from the sun. And I think in 20 or so years' time, 20, 30 years' time, that is going to be a cheap and widely available, if not completely freely available, resource. And if you think about it, everything in life has the cost of energy built into its production value. And so if you strip that out, everything is likely to get a lot cheaper. We'll be able to desalinate water. We'll be able to grow crops much, much cheaper. We'll be able to grow much higher quality food, right? It's going to power new forms of transportation. It's going to reduce the cost of drug production and healthcare, right? So all of those gains, obviously there'll be a huge commercial incentive to drive the production of those gains, but the cost of producing them is going to go through the floor. I think that's one key thing that a lot of people don't realize that is a reason to be hugely hopeful and optimistic about the future. Everything is going to get radically cheaper in 30 to 50 years.
So 200 years' time, we have no idea what the world looks like. This goes back to the point about being, did you say transhumanist?
Right.
What does that mean?
Transhumanism, I mean, it's a group of people who basically believe that that humans and our soul and our being will one day transcend or move beyond our biological substrate.
Okay.
So our physical body, our brain, our biology is just an enabler for your intelligence and who you are as a person. And there's a group of kind of crackpots, basically, I think, who think that we're going to be able to upload ourselves to a silicon substrate, right? A computer that can hold the essence of what it means to be Stephen. So you in 2200 could well still be you by their reasoning, but you'll live on a server somewhere.
Why are they wrong? I think about all these adjacent technologies like biological advancements. Did you call it like biosynthesis or something?
Yeah, synthetic biology.
Synthetic biology. We think about the nanotechnology development.
Right.
Think about quantum computing. The progress in artificial intelligence, everything becoming cheaper, and I think, why are they wrong?
It's hard to say precisely, but broadly speaking, I haven't seen any evidence yet that we're able to extract the essence of a being from a brain, right? It's that kind of dualism that, you know, there is a mind and a body and a spirit. That is I don't see much evidence for that, even in neuroscience, that actually it's much more one and the same. So I don't think, you know, you're going to be able to emulate the entire brain. So their thesis is that, or some of them cryogenically store their brain after death.
Jesus.
So they have it. They wear these, like, you know how you have like an organ donor tag or whatever. So they have a cryogenically freeze me when I die tag, and so there's like a special like ambulance services that will come pick you up, because obviously you need to do it really quickly. The moment you die, you need to get put into a cryogenic freezer to preserve your, you know, brain forever. I personally think this is nuts, but, you know, their belief is that you'll then be able to reboot that biological brain and then transfer you over. It doesn't seem plausible to me.
When you said at the start of this little topic here that it must be possible to contain it, you said it must be possible. The reason why I struggle with that is because in Chapter 7 you say a line in your book that AI is more autonomous than any other technology in history. For centuries, the idea that technology is somehow running out of control, a self-directed and self-propelling force beyond the realms of human agency, remained a fiction, not anymore. And this idea of autonomous technology that is acting uninstructed and is intelligent, and then you say we must be able to contain it. It's kind of like a massive dog, like a big Rottweiler.
Yeah.
That is, you know, 1,000 times bigger than me, and me looking up at it and going, I'm gonna take you for a walk.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it just looking down at me and just stepping over me, or stepping on me.
Well, that's actually a good example, because we have actually contained Rottweilers before. We've contained gorillas and, you know, tigers and crocodiles and pandemic pathogens and nuclear weapons. And so, you know, it's easy to be, you know, a hater on what we've achieved. But this is the most peaceful moment in the history of our species. This is a moment when our biggest problem is that people eat too much. Think about that. We've spent our entire evolutionary period running around looking for food and trying to stop, you know, our enemies throwing rocks at us. And we've had this incredible period of 500 years where, you know, each year things have broadly, well, maybe each century, let's say, there's been a few ups and downs, but things have broadly got better. And we're on a trajectory for, you know, lifespans to increase and quality of life to increase and health and well-being to improve. And I think that's because in many ways we have succeeded in containing forces that appear to be more powerful than ourselves. It just requires unbelievable creativity and adaptation. It requires compromise, and it requires a new tone, right? A much more humble tone to governance and politics and how we run our world. Not this kind of like hyper-aggressive, adversarial, paranoia tone that we talked about previously, but one that is like much more wise than that, much more accepting that we are unleashing this force that does have that potential to be the Rottweiler that you described, but that we must contain that as our number one priority. That has to be the thing that we focus on, because otherwise it contains us.
I've been thinking a lot recently about cybersecurity as well, just broadly on an individual level. In a world where there are these kinds of tools which seems to be quite close, large language models, it brings up this whole new question about cybersecurity and cyber safety. And, you know, in a world where there's the ability to generate audio and language and videos that seem to be real, what can we trust? And I was watching a video of a young girl whose grandmother was called up by a voice that was made to sound like her son, saying he'd been in a car accident and asking for money, and her nearly sending the money. Or this whole, because this really brings into focus that our lives are built on trusting the things we see, hear, and watch. And now we're at what feels like a moment where we're no longer going to be able to trust what we see on the internet, on the phone. What advice do you have for people who are worried about this?
So, skepticism, I think, is healthy and necessary, and I think that we're going to need it even more than we ever did, right? And so, if you think about how we've adapted to the first wave of this, which was spammy email scams, everybody got them, and over time, people learned to identify them and be skeptical of them and reject them. Likewise, I'm sure many of us get like text messages. I certainly get loads of text messages trying to phish me and ask me to meet up or do this, that, and the other. And we've adapted, right? Now, I think we should all know and expect that criminals will use these tools to manipulate us, just as you described. I mean, the voice is going to be human-like. The deep fake is going to be super convincing. And there are actually ways around those things. So, for example, the reason why the banks invented OTP, one-time passwords, where they send you a text message with a special code, is precisely for this reason, so that you have a 2FA, a two-factor authentication. Increasingly, we will have a 3 or 4-factor authentication, where you have to triangulate between multiple separate independent sources, and it won't just be like call your bank manager and release the funds, right? So this is where we need the creativity and energy and attention of everybody, because defense, the kind of defensive measures, have to evolve as quickly as the potential offensive measures, the attacks that are coming.
I heard you say this, that you think some people are, for many of these problems, we're going to need to develop AIs to defend us from the AIs.
Right. We kind of already have that, right? So we have automated ways of detecting spam online these days. Most of the time there are machine learning systems which are trying to identify when your credit card is used in a fraudulent way. That's not a human sitting there looking at patterns of spending traffic in real time. That's an AI that is like flagging that something looks off. Likewise with data centers or security cameras, a lot of those security cameras these days are, have tracking algorithms that look for, surprising sounds, or like if a glass window is smashed, that will be detected by an AI often that is, listening on the security camera. So, that's kind of what I mean by that, is that increasingly those AIs will get more capable and we'll want to use them for defensive purposes. And that's exactly what it looks like to have good, healthy, well-functioning, controlled AIs that serve us.
I went on one of these large language models and said to me, I said to the large language model, give me an example where an artificial intelligence takes over the world or whatever and just results in the destruction of humanity. And then tell me what we'd need to do to prevent it. And it gave me this wonderful example of this AI called Cynthia that threatens to destroy the world. And it says the way to defend that would be a different AI, which had a different name. And it said that this one would be acting in human interests, and we'd basically be fighting one AI with another AI. And of course, at that level, if Cynthia started to wreak havoc on the world and take control of the nuclear weapons and infrastructure and all that, we would need an equally intelligent weapon to fight it.
Although one of the interesting things that we found over the last few decades is that it so far tended to be the AI plus the human that is still dominating. That's the case in chess, in Go, in other games.
In Go, it's still
Yeah, so there was a paper that came out a few months ago, 2 months ago, that showed that a human was actually able to beat the cutting edge Go program, even one that was better than AlphaGo, with a new strategy that they had discovered. So